Welcome to the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, 8 o'clock. This particular Sunday night, it's the 29th of September. Last Sunday in September. 3 more months, and then it's going to be a new year. It just has gone by so very fast. The Bible Forum's a ministry of alternatives, biblical counseling, and education. It's a nonprofit corporation. Your donations assure the continuation of this ministry and are tax deductible. Go to our website, thebibleforum.net, and click the donate button if you'd like to be part of this ministry. We are here every Sunday night live. The rest of the week we're on YouTube and Facebook and on the website. The videos run. Last week, the last video that I recorded, I could not upload anywhere. I could download it, but I could not upload it to any of the issue. It kept saying, nope, won't work. So the only place you could see it was on the Bible Forum's website. It was the last one. I hope you got through all of those things. As we normally do on Sunday night, in the beginning we have these short shots, news that dominated the airwaves, penetrated our psyche in the course of this week. On the top of that list is Joe Biden and the Ukraine and all the hoopla about our president trying to do something that's not legal. Apparently, one of the perks of having your father elected vice president of the United States is that you get a seat on the board, in this case, of something called Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian national gas firm, with a salary of $50,000 a month. That is well over $250,000. I also read where a trip to China, I believe it was China, netted Hunter Biden's business a cool $1.5 billion. Seems Hunter and Chris Heinz, stepson of John Kerry, run a private equity firm. And Hunter thought it'd be good to make a business trip to China with his father, the vice president of the United States, and, aboard Air Force Two. Well, apparently the company Hunter is associated with was going through some legal problems in the Ukraine. Hunter was scheduled to testify, and Daddy didn't think that was going to work out too well. It was an election year. So he asked the then president of Ukraine to fire the prosecutor in that case. And according to sources, he gave the president of Ukraine 6 hours to get it done. He said he was leaving Ukraine in 6 hours, and he wanted that done. Otherwise, they weren't going to get their money. Some money that the government here was going to give them. Joe Biden later admitted that he was vice president. He had asked the then president of Ukraine to fire an allegedly corrupt prosecutor general. The prosecutor was investigating Burisma, and the prosecutor was fired in the 6-hour time frame. The replacement prosecutor shut down the investigation within a year. This week has been all about President Trump asking the current president of Ukraine to help Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani investigate the Biden's dealings in Ukraine. Trump insists there's no quid pro quo and therefore nothing wrong with the question. That there are currently several millions of dollars of U.S. aid to Ukraine on the table, fueling the accusation of a quid pro quo. The Democrats are hollering foul. The mainstream media is backing up the Democrat position. At the same time, John Solomon, an executive president at The Hill, called into question the version of events that former Vice President Joe Biden has been repeating regarding his interactions with Ukraine while he was vice president. Writing in The Hill publication, online publication, by the way, thehill.com, Solomon said that through years of reporting on this topic, he had come across a number of details that ran contrary to what Joe Biden had said. Through interviews and reviewing documents, the fired prosecutor general, a fellow by the name of Victor Shokin, said he found proof that lawyers for Burisma had approached the Ukrainian government shortly after Shokin's firing to apologize, quote, for dissemination of false information by U.S. representatives and public figures, end of quote. Solomon also pointed to a 2015 New York Times story which noted that, unknown to Vice President Biden, Burisma had hired Hunter Biden less than a month after former President Barack Obama appointed Joe Biden to be in charge of the United States' relationship with Ukraine. Just worked out that way. During an interview on Friday, Solomon told Glenn Beck that, quote, at that moment, he was fired. Shokin was making plans to interview Hunter Biden. Solomon stressed that this in itself doesn't mean Hunter Biden did anything wrong, but he was about to interview Hunter Biden in the middle of a 2016 election cycle. That would have been a big story. Solomon said that Shokin had personally told him that he believed he was fired for continuing to look into Burisma despite Biden's request for him to end the investigation. Reports indicate Biden gave the Ukrainians 6 hours to get it done. If they wanted the $6 billion of aid, they had to fire this prosecutor. They got their aid. The Democrats hollering, nothing to see here. It's Trump that's the dirty rat. Trump has done, is doing worse in trying to get this information than anything that we might have done or are doing. Currently, we're being told that this whistleblower is going to be outed and is going to testify before Congress. We'll see how that works out. Under a heading I've entitled Signs of the Times, the Trump campaign received $15 million in small donations from all 50 states by Friday afternoon this week, which included donations from 50,000 new donors. This feat is significant because it happened in just 3 days. When this story hit the fan in the middle of last week, this money started to pour in. $1 million in the first 3 hours following Pelosi's announcement of impeachment proceedings. $5 million in the first 24 hours. Apparently, Americans are putting the money where their mouth is, and they think the Democrats are on the wrong side of this issue. Fred Fleets, I think that's how you pronounce it, served as the National Security Council Chief of Staff last year, and he believes the whistleblower who filed a complaint against President Trump was aided by congressional Democrats and lawyers. Writing in the New York Post, Fleets said the complaint suggests the whistleblower was, quote, pursuing a political agenda, end of quote. I don't know about you, but I'm shocked. He pointed to the writing style of the complaint to back his claim. He says it appears to be written by a law professor and includes legal references and detailed footnotes. It also has an unusual legalistic reference on how this complaint should be classified. He says, from my experience, such an extremely polished whistle-blowing complaint is unheard of. This document looks as if the leaker had outside help, possibly from congressional staff members. Oh my goodness, that's not possible. In fact, Fleets, who also boasts a nearly 2-decade career in the CIA, believes the well-polished complaint closely resembles a tweet from House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff. Happens to be a Democrat from California. This week on Blaze radio program, they do a program called Chad Prather, the Chad Prather Show. And on Thursday's episode, the Chad Prather Show, author Rick Rittmeyer joined the show to talk about mental toughness in the era of something called triggered college students. Have you heard of that? These kids are more about social media than social interaction. So they can sit behind a keyboard and do what they need to do. But when it comes to social interaction, they miss all that. The result is they go through school memorizing, regurgitating, memorizing, regurgitating. Then they enter the workforce, and the minute someone says something they don't like, they go nuts. And they start running, screaming out the door that they were triggered. Chad added that kids today have not been taught the skills required to deal with rejection. The problem is that this has expanded into politics. He calls it emotion-based politics. Emotion-based politics means that there are no facts anymore. So the minute I come to you with facts that disagree with the beliefs you have, you automatically default to racist, bigot, or some other horrible name. With children, they call it being triggered. What is it when you're an adult? Where does all this come from? Well, apparently the experts tell us it comes from children with no family. It doesn't mean they don't have parents. It doesn't mean there aren't parents in the household, but they just don't have a family. They're related to all these people that are around them, but they have no real social interaction. They have no training, no passing of the baton, culturally speaking. So when they are thrust into the real world, they tend to explode. And it happens so often and so predictably, we now have a name for it. Look for it to show up in the next edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, which would be Volume 6 at that point. We already have a DSM-5. You're going to get paid for being this kind of a person, or you're going to get help for free. You're going to have a whole lot of benefits because you can't function. Students across the globe walked out of class on September 20 as part of a climate strike aimed at pursuing environmental justice. This from the collegefix.com, Kyle Hooten from St. Olaf College. Does anybody know what that phrase means? Environmental justice? The College Fix sent one of its student reporters, Kyle Hooten, to a climate strike in St. Olaf College in Minnesota, where roughly 1,000 students vacated classes, marched into the town of Northfield, and held a rally. Many of these kids said they believe humanity is on a collision course with climate catastrophe and agreed with Democrat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that there's only 12 years left before the planet becomes uninhabited. That's 12 years from now, which is 20 years from the first time these people predicted 10 years. We'll come back to this later in the program. ProphecyNewsWatch.com is talking to us this week about a UN expert charged with promoting LGBT rights around the world. How that he called on governments to take action against religions that don't embrace LGBT rights. In his latest report to the General Assembly, Victor Madrigal-Borlos said, quote, states should adopt decisive action when religious authorities, leaders, or agents infringe on the rights of LGBT persons through violence, discrimination, including hate speech. The UN actually has an expert on staff to promote the LGBT lifestyle. I'm old enough to remember several generations in America where the LGBT lifestyle was considered really, really strange, unnatural, not normal, and just counterintuitive. We didn't embrace these people's lifestyle. We didn't exalt it. In fact, we tried the best we could to not let it impact us or our children as much as possible. Isn't it amazing? Have you heard about Nest Hub Max? This from ZeroHedge.com. This is Google. Their new Nest Hub Max is a smart display that comes equipped with a 6.5 megapixel facial recognition camera and identifies you and monitors all your actions inside your home. Isn't that wonderful? The device allows you to check on what's happening in your home when you're out. And because of its facial recognition capabilities, it can detect when you enter the room and provide personalized information to you, such as your day's appointments, the weather forecast, and so on. The camera also enables two-way video calls over Google Duo. Never heard of that. And comes loaded with the Google Assistant, which has apparently been the focus of huge number of privacy issues already. While all these functions might sound super convenient and fun, the privacy issues raised by the camera and audio functionality are sure to put a little damper on sales for a while if people find out about it. They'll get it all fixed before long, and the world will then begin to eat up this new technology. Can you say Big Brother? Oh, you're thinking no one else will ever have access to your camera, right? Think again. It's Google. According to Business Insider, the China Tribunal, an independent nonprofit human rights charity that is investigating the mass harvesting, claimed that the government is collecting hearts. This is in China. Kidneys, lungs, and skin. Not from cadavers, but from members of banned and/or persecuted religious groups, including Muslims and members of the Falun Gong religious group. Hamid Sabi, a lawyer with the China Tribunal, informed UN that, quote, forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience, including the religious minorities, has been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale. According to the final report, the group was able to collect evidence that thousands were, quote, cut open while still alive for their kidneys, their livers, hearts, lungs, cornea, and skin, all of which were removed and turned into commodities for sale. Sort of like we were doing with aborted babies. Doctors, the report reads, killed those innocent people simply because they pursued truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, and because they lived lives of healthy exercise and meditation that was seen as dangerous to the interests and objectives of the totalitarian state of the People's Republic China. Sabi employed the Human Rights Council to bring an end to the forced harvesting of these marginalized people, calling it one of the worst mass atrocities of this century. And finally, Trey Gowdy wandered in to the impeachment discussion this week. You know Trey Gowdy. He's retired from the House of Representatives. He's a South Carolina attorney up in Columbia, up in that area. We're talking impeachment. The left insists the president should be impeached for interfering in the upcoming election. How? Well, by seeking dirt on former Vice President Biden and for sending his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, over to the Ukraine. Well, former U.S. Representative Trey Gowdy weighed in on it this week, appearing on Fox News with Dana Perino. And he asked, what is the theory under which that is an impeachable offense? If the president asks Mayor Giuliani to do it, is that the impeachable offense? Keep in mind the transcript, Dana. It was the Ukrainian president who first brought up Rudy's name. It wasn't Donald Trump. Democrats have begun an impeachment inquiry based on accusations that the president used his office in order to seek favors from a foreign government in order to influence the 2020 election. Defenders of the president say he was merely asking the Ukrainian government to look into corruption that might relate to U.S. interests. The real interference came from former Vice President Joe Biden, insisting that the then Ukraine president fire the prosecutor in a case involving the company in which his son was a board member, and holding Ukraine up by withholding the $6 billion aid package if they didn't do as he wanted. Gave him 6 hours. That's high-stakes blackmail in anybody's book. And if we never mention it, never do or never say anything to make it right, what does that make us? Gowdy asks. Now he says, I'm convinced Trump was fishing for dirt on Biden, but even if he weren't, the questions are legitimate. Any honorable man or woman would do the same thing, or should. It's called redeeming our reputation, seeking to make things right. Now do you see how upside down and backwards our culture is? We don't even know what's right anymore.